Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Teresa from the blog and YouTube channel freetoflower.com, where I share recipes from scratch, homesteading how-tos, and life on our farm in the heart of Europe. Today I bring you something really special that I've been preparing for a really long time, a collection of my favorite fall soup recipes. I am in the Czech Republic, and one of my favorite things about Czech culture and Czech cuisine are soups. We love soups for pretty much every meal of the day, and so today I made a giant compilation of my favorite recipes for you to try. They're all easy, super fast, and best of all, at least for me, they're super healthy, kids love them, and they're just such a fun fall thing. All right, come on, let's take a look. Let's dive right in. A little bit of kitchen cleanup before I start cooking. I don't know about you, but for me, I cannot cook in a messy kitchen. It's just way too distracting and confusing to my overall process. But once I am all done, I will dive in. A little word about my recipes. Like I mentioned in the intro, most of them are Czech or Eastern European. However, the ingredients for all of them are really simple and basic. It's really nothing special, so you can make these wherever you are. In fact, I made a lot of these when I lived abroad and missed home, and it was just such a sweet way for me to remember where I'm from and have the taste of home. All right, we are going to start with a Czech classic, which is Czech mushroom soup. In the fall, I make this all the time because one of our favorite pastimes is foraging for wild mushrooms. I know this can sound kind of crazy and a little bit niche if you're coming from the US. However, in Czech culture, this is really common. We do it as a family ever since the kids are really little, and same for my kids. You know, we all go on family outings to the forest and we look for mushrooms. How do we know that they're not poisonous? That's probably the main question that I get all the time. And the answer isn't exactly what I just said. We do it since we're really little, and the main reason why we go as a whole family, so it's like a multi-generational tradition, is that the older generations teach the younger generations through practice time and time and time again to spot the correct mushrooms and leave the rest. Mushrooms are delicious. This year has been really abundant in the amount of mushrooms, so I've been making all the mushroom things. If you see this little jar of dry mushrooms that I have, and I have a completely full gallon jar, let's get right to it. By the way, all of these recipes are up on my blog. I'm going to link them in the description box below. In order to make this, you are going to need 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour, some bone broth, butter and olive oil, potatoes if you want to add those in, those are optional, 1 large fistful of dried or fresh mushrooms, some heavy whipping cream that I'm pouring in right now, 2 to 3 tablespoons of vinegar, about 4 eggs, some sugar, some dill, bay leaf, allspice, and salt and pepper to taste. To make this, it is really simple. You saw me go through a bunch of the steps already. I'm going to link the full recipe in the description box below. Really, the only quote-unquote tricky part can be making the roux. But once you do it for the first time, you're gonna get the hang of it, and it's not gonna be difficult at all. This is a really hearty, thick, creamy soup for those days when you've been outside the whole day and maybe the weather is already kind of chilly and you want to come back home and warm up with some delicious fall mushroom soup. Now, the traditional Czech way to serve this is actually in a bread bowl. I don't know if you've seen this or not. You will not see it in this video. Here I'm just serving it to my kids for lunch in their bowls, but just the other day I did actually make a bread bowl, and I will feature it here on my channel, so stay tuned. Next up is one of my kids' absolute favorites, Czech Sauerkraut Soup. I love this soup because it has probiotic properties thanks to the sauerkraut. It has sausage in it, which the kids love, and it's super easy to make. So all you need is some sauerkraut, about 4 cups, about 6 cups of bone broth, 1 large onion, 2 sausages of choice, 3 tablespoons all-purpose flour, some oil or butter or lard for frying, salt and pepper to taste, 2 tablespoons sweet paprika, 2 bay leaves, 1/2 teaspoon allspice, and 1/2 teaspoon ground caraway seeds. Now those are optional. I'm actually not a huge fan of caraway, so feel free to skip. I do put it always. You are going to fry up your sausage on the pan, then add bone broth to a large pot along with the sauerkraut. Bring to a boil over medium-high heat. Add in the bay leaf, the caraway seeds if using, and your allspice. Now, if your cabbage has been fermenting for a while, you only need to bring it to a boil briefly. Actually, you don't even want it in full boil, you just want it to warm up so that you don't kill all the beneficial bacteria before you move on with the rest of the recipe. If maybe it's not fermented cabbage or it hasn't been fermenting for very long and it's still pretty firm, you want to boil it for a while just so that it can soften up and be a little bit easier to eat. Once your sausage is nice and browned the way you like it, sprinkle it with some all-purpose flour and some paprika until it's nice and covered and red, the way that you can see on my pan up in the video. Once that is done, mix everything together, allow to cool slightly, and then season with salt and pepper to taste. We love to serve this with a dollop of sour cream and some fresh bread. Roast tomato soup. This is our favorite when all the tomatoes start coming in from the garden. My kids love eating this one. You will find out why in just a moment. You will need about 2 pounds of tomatoes, 1 large red onion, 4 garlic cloves, about 4 cups of bone broth, some oregano, fresh basil, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, and some fun-shaped pasta for the kids. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, line a cookie sheet with parchment paper, and spread your tomatoes on the parchment paper evenly. Sprinkle it with your oregano, or you can use Italian seasoning, drizzle with olive oil, add the garlic cloves. Roast until tomatoes are soft and cooked, about 40 minutes. While the tomatoes are roasting, fry up some onions in a skillet with olive oil. Combine the tomatoes, bone broth, basil leaves. Reserve a few of the basil leaves for serving though. Add in the onions in a large pot and then blend with a stick blender. Boil pasta according to the instructions on the packet, and then assemble everything into bowls, placing a few pasta pieces on the bottom and pouring your roast tomato soup on top. Garnish with heavy whipping cream and your fresh basil leaves. Voila! Summer in a bowl. Czech garlic soup. This soup is famous for being the ultimate hangover cure, or if you're sick, it's a great soup to make when you're not feeling well, and it is super easy. All you need are about 4 large potatoes, 10 garlic cloves, yes, it's going to be very garlicky, 1 onion, 4 cups of bone broth, some butter, a bay leaf, and 1 egg. In a large pot, melt 1 tablespoon of butter and fry the finely chopped onion on it. Pour in the bone broth and add cubed potatoes. Once everything comes to a light simmer, slice 5 garlic cloves and add them to the soup. Turn down the heat, press the other 5 cloves with the garlic press, and add to the soup once the potatoes are fully cooked. Season to taste with salt and pepper, marjoram, and caraway seeds. And lastly, whisk in the egg and serve. Now, if you are using this as a hangover soup, I do not recommend the egg, but for all other purposes, it adds a little bit of extra protein, and it is absolutely delicious. This is one of my husband's favorite soups. What I love about it is that it's so simple and fast to make. You can probably make this with what you've got in the pantry, even though you might feel like there's nothing in your pantry and your fridge, and you don't even know what to make. Super simple, super fast. Borscht Soup. This one technically is not Czech, but it is definitely Eastern European, and I love making it. Beet has so many great properties, and we have so many of them in the garden. This giant beet that I'm chopping up right now is from our garden. It was absolutely delicious, and the color is just stunning. So let's jump right in. You are going to need about 1 pound of beef. Sirloin or brisket are best for this. 2 medium beets, or as you can see, 1/2 of a giant beet, like what I'm using over here. 1 carrot, 1 medium piece of parsley root, 1/4 of a celery bulb, 1 onion, 1/2 pound of white cabbage, 2 peeled tomatoes, those are optional, butter for sauteing, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, some sour cream, 2 bay leaves, 2 black peppercorns, some allspice, and parsley for serving. Fill a large pot with cold water. Add the bay leaf, the allspice, beef, and peppercorns. Cover and bring to a slow boil. While the meat is cooking, peel the beet and cut into thin matchsticks. Add the beets to a large pot, add a ladle or 2 of the water that the beef is cooking in, which is now basically becoming beef broth, and bring your beet to a simmer. Continue cooking until the beet is nice and soft, like you can see in the video. Peel all your other root vegetables and chop them finely. When the meat is soft, take it out of the pot and set it aside. Keep the broth. Heat butter on a frying pan and begin by sauteing the chopped onion. Then add the rest of your root vegetables and continue to saute until soft and fragrant. Transfer vegetables to a large pot. Pour in the beef broth. You can also substitute bone broth here if you want a richer, thicker taste. Grate your cabbage, or you can also chop it finely and add it to the soup. Then add in the cooked beet, finely chopped tomatoes if using, and simmer on medium-low for about 30 minutes. Meanwhile, chop beef into small pieces, add to the soup, and allow to come to a boil for a few minutes. Finally, add your apple cider vinegar, and feel free to adjust the amount to your desired taste. Serve with a dollop of sour cream and parsley. We are continuing the soup marathon with Leek Soup. This is another super simple soup that my kids love. You will need 1 large leek, 2 tablespoons butter, 35 fluid ounces of bone broth, that's about 1 liter, 3 medium potatoes, 6 ounces of heavy whipping cream, some salt and pepper to taste, and a pinch of nutmeg. Chop the leek into rounds, melt the butter in a pot, add the white parts of the leek, and then allow them to soften, but they should not brown. Pour in the vegetable or bone broth, add the chopped green part of the leek, diced potatoes, and a pinch of nutmeg. Cook for about 20 minutes until the potatoes are soft. Add the cream and use an immersion blender to lightly blend the soup, which will also thicken it. If you like creamy soups, you can blend it until completely smooth. If you would like little pieces of leek inside, don't blend it completely. Finally, season the soup to taste with salt and pepper. You will notice that most of those recipes contain some sort of broth as a base. I use my homemade bone broth as the base for all of these. It's super easy to make, and I have a recipe for it on my blog. I'm going to link it in the description box below. This makes it really nutritious and higher in protein. It's made from our home-raised chickens, so most of my broth is chicken broth, but bone broth made from beef bones will work for this really well as well. It would not be fall without pumpkin soup. These are homegrown pumpkins, which I'm so proud of, and I made the most delicious soup along with some other things. Recipes coming, but let's jump into the soup. You will need 1 large or 2 smaller pumpkins, about 2 liters of bone broth. Of course, you can use less if you want your soup to be thicker. 4 cups coconut milk, salt and pepper to taste, some cinnamon, nutmeg, and olive oil. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 200 degrees Celsius. Cut your pumpkins in half, scoop out the seeds, and drizzle the inside with some olive oil and salt. Line a cookie sheet with parchment paper and place your pumpkins open side down on the cookie sheet. Roast until slightly golden brown spots start appearing on the skin and the inside is soft and mushy. Once done, allow to cool slightly, just enough to handle. Then scoop out all the puree out of the skin. Add your bone broth to a large pot. Heat until hot, then add in the pumpkin puree, coconut milk, and spices. Once again, you can adjust the amount of bone broth and pumpkin puree ratio depending on how thick you like your soup to be. Blend using an immersion blender until smooth, and salt and pepper to taste. I love serving the soup with my homemade sourdough croutons. They really accentuate the taste and make it so fun for the kids. I've got a recipe up on my blog for how to make these. They're really simple, really easy, but also a great way to use up your stale sourdough bread, so I will link them in the description box below. Thank you for joining me on this wild fall soups marathon. I hope you got some great ideas and recipes for soups to make in your own kitchen, not just in the fall, but throughout the whole winter season. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below to never miss a new video. Until next week.